everyone. It is, as always, an absolute delight to see all of you here. I'm excited because we are traditionally on the very last path tonight that leads from Hokmah into Kether. So as of tonight, you will have finished the traditional Tree of Life. How exciting is that? So I'm going to give you all a big hand because this has been a fabulous journey. Now, of course, you all know that we're going to come back next week and we'll be gathering all of the energy together and pulling it back down to this earth plane that we all live on, where we can utilize it in our everyday life, every day, every way. And we'll talk a little more about that towards the end of tonight's class. In the meantime, let's jump in and get started by initially going over our foundation information and then taking a look back at last week where we completed Path 12. So let's just take a look at all of that. Okay, as always, you know that my book is available. You get it automatically with this class, but if you want the paperback volume, it's available both on my website and on Amazon.com on my author page. And if you email us, you can actually get a signed copy from me. So that's another option if some of you want to do that. I would absolutely love to do that for you. Taking a look at our PATHWORKING checklist. We're almost going to be done with this, folks, but by now you have it memorized. First off, always remember, give yourself about 45 minutes of free, undisturbed time that you set aside each week when you're doing the pathworking. And even though you're coming towards the end of your pathworking experience now, I know that since you will always have these paths to look back at, that both on your own and perhaps you'll join me in future groups that I teach, you'll come in and you'll redo the paths, and you'll always, when you're doing the path at home on your own, allow that 45 minutes of undisturbed time. And that's going to help you to get deeper into the pathworking experience. Before you do your pathworking, you're going to color the mandala that each path has. I like to download them and print them out and always have a few extras hanging around because, believe it or not, you can actually color that mandala without doing the path. And you know, if you're into being creative or artistic or need a focus for your meditation to be able to pull yourself back into balance in a specific way, if you color the mandala for a path, just doing that action will bring the energy of the path back to you after you've done it once. So it's a good idea to keep extra copies of those mandalas around. On our Facebook this week, I noticed that one of you had a grandchild who said, "Hey, can I please color this? I really, really want to color it. And by the way, she did a great job, so please tell her that." And you let her color it. And I'm sure in the back of your mind is, should I have allowed my grandchild to cover something that is this deep and this intense? And I've got to tell you, my own opinion is absolutely. Everything in our universe is part of the Tree of Life, including children of all ages, including pets, including our government, including religions, including mathematical formulas. If it exists, it is found somewhere on the Tree of Life. And when we do our path working and we work with our mandalas and the other aspects of the path working, we're doing it on whatever level our psyche and our emotions and our intellect and our spiritual body is capable of doing it at that time. So personally, I see no reason to keep this from children. They will have a very different way of looking at it than we do. But I see no reason to guard this from a young mind or youthful experience. But do make sure if she goes deeper than just coloring the mandala, that you lead her through and follow all of these same rules that we follow in our classes, which is what this pathworking checklist is all about, and along with our protections. So go ahead and color your mandala first. And as you're doing the pathworking, of course, your eyes will drift closed as you're gazing at that mandala. But you're also going to hold the stone for the path in your right hand, because that's the hand that is going to send energy into the stone and charge it. Now, if you should redo the paths in the future, or even if you just want to carry a stone from a path that's already been charged with that path, hold it on your left side or in your left hand, because that's your receptive side. Okay, so it's the right hand the first time you're doing the path, the left hand for all the times after that with that same stone. I also had somebody on our Facebook group talking about substitutions for the different stones. She said at one point she was unable to find jacinth, and another time unable to find chrysolite. And I agree, sometimes those stones are difficult to locate, but we can go into the internet. I love that information highway we have available to us now, and we can look up the color of jacinth or the color of chrysolite or what family of stones they belong to, and we can get a stone of similar color or a stone that is belonging to the same family. And in the case of jacinth, you would be working with any orangey colored stone. Jacinth is actually an orange shade of zircon, or chrysolite. And in chrysolite, you would be looking at any light blue stone, which could be anything from a light blue agate to a pale sapphire. Any light blue stone would work well for chrysolite. So look on the internet if you can't find a particular stone, and find a stone which is of similar color. I also had someone in the past ask if they could use the same stone, and I know I already answered this, but this is a good time to bring it up again, to use the same stone for multiple paths. So for example, every time a path calls for a red colored stone, you would use your same red colored stone that you used the first time. I'm not going to say that that's not okay to do, because the path working is totally individual for you. And if your intuition says, yes, I should do this, by all means do it. However, I don't. I like to keep each path having its own stone. I actually write the path number on the stone with magic marker, so that in the future I can go back and pull just that one stone out of my stone bag and meditate with it and bring back the elements of the path by holding it in my left hand as I meditate. Now, we're also going to keep the Tarot Major Arcana of the path under our pillow. Carry it with you during the week if you like, same thing with the stone, but definitely keep it under your pillow at night. Definitely have it on you or next to you when you're actually doing the path working. Now, we also can be wearing the color of the path, both while we do it, while we're on this session with me, or while you're just moving through your daily life during the week. And what that does is it brings more and more of the elements of the path into your psyche. So the path will be absorbed by you more readily, and the elements of it appear in your physical life more readily, at least the positive elements. Okay, but these paths are all about self-growth on every level, and that's what we want to see. Okay, I also like to anoint my third eye, either with an oil that is from the path, either the Sephiroth before or after the path, or the path itself. And I do know I've recommended this, and a lot of you are doing it. If you have too much trouble getting all of these different oils, then just get one, get lavender, and work with lavender, anointing your brow for each path that you do. Now, when you come out of the path each week, when you're finished with it, don't forget to record before you do anything else the way you felt as you exited the path. How did the path leave you feeling? Was it buoyant? Was it up? Was it tired? How did the path leave you feeling? Then go back into the path and remember, were there any particular parts of the path that stood out, that felt more important, or that your mind keeps lingering on? Write those down first. Then look at how you feel after the path is done. So are you excited about moving forward into life? Are you confused? What are the feelings you have, 5 or 10 minutes after completing the path? And of course, during the week, you're keeping a continual journal of things that are happening in your actual everyday life and in your mind or in your actuality, how you may be handling them a little bit differently because of your experience on the path. Because that's how you will see the path affecting your day-to-day life. And of course, many of you at this point are getting precognition as you move through the path working. Some of you are getting things appearing in your life, and lo and behold, there they are on next week's path. There's a lot of precognition, a lot of deep, I think of it as dragging things or pulling things out of your deep psyche and understanding them and then being able to let them go. There are a whole lot of these kinds of things going on right now at this stage of your evolution on the path working and more. So also, of course, remember, as we do our path working, protect when you do the path working. Also protect before you come on these classes. And certainly use your protection. Feel free to use it as often as you need to in your daily life. Okay? Protection is never a bad thing. I was speaking with somebody recently who said, Sandy, when someone like a yogi reaches a certain level of enlightenment, that being doesn't need to do protections like you teach your students any longer. At least I've never seen one do them. And I said, no, you're correct. When someone reaches that level of evolution where they're in that altered space that we have all felt, having entered Kether numerous times now, when you're living in that altered space 100% of the time, when you have brought that energy into your physical body and you and it are one, that individual doesn't need to go through protections in their day-to-day life because the energy itself is a protection that's shooting through them and around them and from them. Now, we're not there yet. Some of you may be. I'm not going to say you're not. The aim is to get there, but we're not, most of us. I'm not there yet. And so I still, after all these years, I still throw these protections around me in my daily life, when I'm teaching classes, when I'm working with clients. It's almost a natural instinct to just put myself into that protection. And even if I feel that I'm in that very heightened, enlightened state, just in case I should slip out of it by accident, I still put myself in protection. So yes, those very, very enlightened individuals who really do exist on our planet have moved beyond the need for that daily protection that we all need. For us, protection is training wheels, so we still need it. Okay? So I just felt the need. I don't know who is having that question in their mind, but I felt the need to explain that at this point to you. Okay, if you would all pull out your path journals and open them and take a look down as we look back at last week's path that we were on from Sunday to Sunday, because this group is doing the paths themselves individually on Sunday nights. So look back from the 2 Sundays ago to last Sunday and look at your journal as I'm reading through and talking a little bit about areas that the 12th path will help you to work on. The 12th path helps you to dissolve creative blocks. Now, of course, in our world, most of us tend to think about that as writing because so many of us are writing books, which I love. I think it's wonderful. But it will dissolve these creative blocks in every other aspect of your life as well. If you're unable to figure out a particular problem and it needs a creative solution, all of a sudden the solution appears. If you're dealing with people who don't maybe get along as well together as you would like, and all of a sudden you get the understanding of the insight of exactly what the common denominator is there to get them to work together. So there are so many types of creativity. There's the creativity that comes out of our hands when we sculpt or create something with our hands. There's musical creativity. So expand your mind and recognize that one of the reasons that your abilities are expanding right now is because blocks that have been in your system that may have said, oh, I can't do that, or that'll take too long, or so-and-so does that better than me, all these excuses we give ourselves no longer exist. That now there's no barrier, no wall between you and your resolution of whatever that thing is that you are wanting to get a handle on. Also, and this is part of that, it helps you to become aware of exactly what your own blockages are, whether they're creative or other things. You begin to see that perhaps things that you've been blaming on other people are actually your own resistance about things that you didn't want to do, that you had resistance about. You see that? Okay? So that is an opening of how to find your own creative blocks and regular blocks to all kinds of things in your life. Maybe there's something you've always wanted to learn or to study or to do or accomplish, or a contest you wanted to compete in. And now you understand that the resistance to that, the thing that's blocking you, never was outside of you to begin with. It always originated from inside you. It wasn't your husband saying no. It wasn't your daughter or your pet taking up too much of your time. It was you having internal resistance that created reasons why you weren't able to step forward. Now, it also teaches you how to identify your emotional buttons. And because you get to identify your emotional buttons, you get in touch with your own problems. Okay? So the first step, folks, towards solving any problem in your life, within yourself, is to actually get in touch with your emotional response to it. Why is this thing a problem? I always have a saying that what is a problem in your life is not a problem in my life. Your problems are easy for me, but my problems are easy for you. And that's because my problems are associated with my emotional buttons. Your problems are associated with your emotional buttons. So get in touch with all of those emotional buttons. Quit hiding them from yourself. Quit getting mad at yourself because you have them. Instead of all those emotions, just look at yourself and say, oh, that was an interesting response I just had. I wonder what's behind that response. And look deeper. And you are going to discover that maybe that particular emotional button originated when you were a child. Or maybe it's simply attached to something else that you really just don't want to do or don't want to talk about. The thing is, once you understand that it's okay to have emotional buttons and that your emotional buttons are actually triggers that help you to get in touch with your own responses, and by doing that, they help you to resolve your problems. So that needs to be addressed before you can recognize that the problem may not really even be a problem at all. It may simply be your reaction that creates the problem. So this is worthy of thought. And I'm going to ask you, as I'm talking about that, how many things like that came up in your life last week when we were on Path 12? How many times did you fly off the handle, or did you react to something and then really take a look at it and say, oh, wow, I really did overreact to that. That was a button. And if I don't overreact to it, or if I change my reaction pattern, that problem just goes away. It gets very easy to deal with. I read in the Facebook area that you list your insights in. I read one of you saying how much easier the problems, easier issues seem to be worked through under Path 12. And I think this is exactly why things got easier on Path 12. Getting more in touch with yourself, knowing that you must lose who you are in order to value who you are. That's an interesting one. I don't know if any of you actually lost or had a sense of lost identity on Path 12. I hope not. It's difficult to do that. But all of us can look back at times in our life where we had a loss of identity. Maybe we retired and we were identified with the job we had, and so we went through a little bit of a scramble to find ourselves again. Maybe we got married or divorced and changed how we saw ourselves. All of us, as we move through life, go through issues, situations where we lose who we think we are and then have to re-find ourselves or sometimes rebuild ourselves. And in the process, we find more value in ourselves. We become more solid, we become more centered. So look back in your journal and see if you found yourself reflecting last week on any of those situations. Learn to let go of your identification with your resistance and blocks. Folks, that's a big one. That is a huge one. And I have a comment I want to make on that I find very disturbing. My assistant pointed this out to me in her great wisdom a short time ago. I started to pay attention to it. She is so right. We've gone through a period in our culture here in the United States where commercials for drugs to help you with different health issues approach it by calling it your health problem. For example, this drug can cure your diabetes. So when your diabetes acts up, and Lisa pointed this out to me and said, Sandy, that is very disturbing. And I said, I hadn't really noticed that they're doing this. But yes, if they are, I would find it disturbing too. And sure enough, they are. And as always, marketers seem to understand human psyche better than just about everybody, including psychologists. And what they want people to do is to identify with their disease so that they can go deeper into it and use more drugs. Okay? So, folks, if you're one of those people who are listening to those commercials, I now turn them off. But if you're listening to them, please don't assume that that's you. Okay? Do not identify with your disease. Okay? Did I just say that? It's not your disease. Don't identify with any disease. Don't identify with any illness. Don't identify with any resistance. Don't identify with any block in your life. Now, recognize it, but recognize it as different from and other than self. Do not take it into yourself. Okay? Can't make that any clearer. That's so important. And I like using that example because that's such an obvious example. But ask yourself as you look at your journal from the 12th path and say, well, how many things in my life have become major issues or major blocks that only became that because of my identification with it? Okay? I can give a very good example out of my own life here. Many years ago, a lot of you are aware, I owned a very famous, now famous bookstore. It's now closed in Port Charlotte, Florida. Famous because it was listed in so many books by so many different well-known people in the psychic field. And I really identified with that business. I identified with being a business owner. And when the time came that I was called upon to travel, to do lectures outside of that store, to build a business of working with clients on a broader level outside of that store, I had a great deal of difficulty doing it. I felt like I was carrying the store with me on a ball and chain around my foot because I was obligated to my employees, obligated to my public, obligated to all my customers because I identified that the store was me. So you see, in order for me to move on and accomplish and do all the things that you identify me with now, I had to separate myself from that store. That's a really good example right out of my own life. The things that you identify with yourself with initially can help you to grow because, for example, if I'm idol worshiping a famous tennis player and I copy that famous tennis player and I work at it 10 or 12 hours a day, I'm going to become a very good tennis player. So initially identifying with someone or something can help us to evolve, but eventually that identification must be put down because it will create resistance and it will ultimately block you from further growth. So it's a process, and understand that process. You shouldn't be really identifying, you should be emulating, not identifying. You should be guiding and helping, not identifying. Another example, I'm using this for my own life. When I was a child and living at home with my family, my mother had been a very, very brilliant, exciting, really entrepreneurial type of a personality as a young woman. And when she got married, her values, her family values said, quit work, stop driving, be a stay-at-home mom, all those things which were great for the family, but not so good for this energetic person who wanted to create and become and be an in-charge entrepreneur in her world. And so when my sister and I got to be teenagers, my mother began to live her life through us. What did you say to that one? How'd you handle that situation? Gee, you did that well, you did that wrong. You know what you need to do? You need to go back and change how you handled that, fix that, change this. And we began to feel like her puppets. Now, that changed, obviously. It's not exactly easy to control teenagers, which a lot of you understand. The thing is that the reason she did that was because she had deprived herself of her ability to have that freedom to accomplish and to shine, and created that resistance. Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I can't do that. And then she had identified with us, the objects of her sacrifice. And because she had sacrificed for us, she expected that we would live for her. Now, how many people in your life can you identify that have done that same thing, either with their children or someone or something else? This is very common. This is important for you to understand and to recognize that when you do these things, it's not coming from outside of you. It's coming from inside of you. Also, learning to be responsible for everything that you project and create. Everything. Good and bad. I've been telling my clients this for 38 years. And I can tell you from many past experiences with them, this is a hard pill to swallow. When you are first beginning to learn that you are manifesting your world, initially it sounds, oh wow, I can make things happen. But right around the corner from that is the recognition that you've made in your life, not just the good things, but all the bad things happen too. At that point, many people put the brakes on, step back from their evolutionary journey, put their head in the sand and say, I don't want this because I don't want to be responsible for those bad things in my life. And the thing you need to understand is that you've created bad, you've created good. As long as you're getting out of your own way and you're allowing that creative energy to flow and you're not allowing resistance or confusion to come in, you are a constant creator. You're constantly setting the things in motion that are in your heart, your mind, your emotions. You're bringing them into fruition. We human beings are magicians in a sense. We are creators. We're fabulous creators. But if you hide from your ability to create because you're afraid to be responsible for those creations, you're going to set up a tremendous conflict within you. And the result is you're not going to be happy. That becomes the person who wants to move to a new state, for example, and immediately gives themselves 1,000 reasons why they can't do it. So you're continually and always fighting a battle within yourself. So when you understand that you can create and you can do whatever you want, it's important for you to think through the repercussions. And sometimes we have to use a little intuition there. Look at the repercussions, look at the echoes of what this action, or every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Look at the results of this action I'm currently taking to the best of my ability. And if it satisfies my needs first, and the needs of those I love second, and the needs of those that it will imply or implicate or touch third, well then do it. Okay? So what I find is that understanding how all of this works and not taking an action unless you are ready to accept the consequences frees you from those fears. So don't be afraid to look into the future. Don't be afraid to take action on what you want to create. Set yourself free from that limitation. Let go of your fear. And the way to do it is to project, where is this action I'm taking right now going to lead me? Where is it going to lead me? It also, the 12th path gives us a sense of relaxation, and it brings balance back into our lives. So most of you should have had a pretty balanced week last week. It also shows you that knowing that there's a purpose for everything that you pass through helps you to understand your purpose now. So this is why, even though it's not good to dwell in the past, it's good to look back at the past, because when we see the totality of a past situation, when it's completed, even though sometimes there were good and bad parts of it, we can understand it. And through understanding the totality of that, that helps us to understand what our purpose and what we're dealing with in our lives right now is. So understanding the past helps us to understand the present, helps us to create a healthier future where we are not afraid of being responsible for our actions and our creations. It helps us to judge ourselves and to not base our self-image on what other people's opinions of us are. I don't know how many of you are doing that. I'm thinking that by this time in your journey up the tree of life, you are allowing very, very few people to judge you. You're allowing very few people's opinions to affect your actions. Once in a while, your feelings might get hurt, but you're probably still doing what you know to be correct for yourself. As time goes on, you're going to realize more and more and more that you don't need other people's opinions. All you need is your own. And recognizing that emotion powers thought, boy, oh boy, if you remember nothing else from the 12th path, remember that. My friends, everything that you put emotion into, you are going to move forward into your future. If you become emotional about it, you're going to deal with it in the future. That's just the way it is. So think about what you want to give your emotion to, because you're going to live with it tomorrow and the next day and the next day. The 12th path also helps us to recognize our thoughts or things. Now, we all know that because we've encountered this again and again in our path working. We know our thoughts are things, and we know where they're going to manifest. We know we're a magician already. The difference between what we know before the 12th and what we learned on the 12th is on the 12th path, we really got directly in touch with that. It became so real. We realized, oh wow, this isn't just statements. This isn't something I'm learning. This isn't something I'm becoming. This is something I am. That's the difference. In the 12th path, we recognize it's already here. We are this being. Also on the 12th path, we learned how to make ourselves totally receptive. And we developed a greater ability for foreknowledge, for prediction, because our third eye was fully activated. We also gave ourselves the ability to forgive ourselves and accept our humanity. I want you to think about something here. This is very important. It isn't possible to move forward in your own personal life if you are holding or harboring a grudge or animosity towards another human being. Now you can understand that, right? Because if I'm harboring animosity or anger towards another person, every time I think about what that person did, I'm pulling myself back to the past. That's interfering with my future, isn't it? So it's very important for me to be able to, I want to use the word forgive. We've talked about this before. Understand and let go might be a better way of putting it. Whatever other people did. Very important for me to understand and let go, which is forgiving other people, right? Because if I don't, it's going to hold me to my past. Well, I can't forgive others until I have forgiven myself. Folks, if there's one person in your life that you have anger and resentment towards, you have that towards them because you haven't forgiven yourself relative to whatever that situation was and how you acted or reacted or how you didn't accept the results of what happened. So that forgiveness is a two-edged sword, yourself and others. Letting it go. Because if you don't, you can't grow. And in a sense, this is not just accepting your humanity, it's accepting everyone's humanity. Everyone's doing the best they can with what they've got, and we don't know their path. We can't know their path. They're not us. The 12th path gives us the ability to expand our consciousness up through our crown center. So if you've been walking around like I have with the super sensitive crown center all week, I know I have had to, where is it? I have had to put this little hat on frequently all week long, which has been a tremendous help. I was on a road trip going to a Gem and Mineral show this past weekend, and Lisa, my assistant, was sitting next to me in the back seat, and every single time some new emergency was happening on the road, about 3 minutes before it happened, I was squinching down in the seat and closing my eyes, and she's saying, "What's going on, Sandy?" It's like, I know that a car is going to cut us off. Okay. Put the hat on, folks. Put the hat on. It will help. Because when that crown center is so wide open, you can be picking up things that really don't concern you, which aren't things that you have to be conscious of in your own life. So put the hat on, physical hat. That won't block your crown center. Your crown center should always be open. Energy needs to flow in and out of your crown all the time. But if you're feeling that it is too open or too sensitive, put a hat on. And when you feel like you're back to normal again, take the hat off. That'll help. Expanding your consciousness is pretty amazing, but there are times, for example, as I said, when you're on the road in heavy traffic, or when you're in the middle of a political rally, or etc., in a situation where people are not generating the nicest energy, where your crown center might be better off not being closed, but being protected. Put a hat on, okay? But when you're at home in your own space, when you're around people you love and care for, when you are in meditation, no hats. Do expand that crown center consciousness. Do go back into the energy of Path 12, because you're going to be so amazed at how you are able to blend your consciousness with God, with your rendition of God, when you're using the energy of this path to do it. This path helps tremendously with all forms of astral projection, even the light and most intense ones that take us up to those supernals. It energizes the right side of your body and the upper half of your body, and generally intensifies energy. Why the right side? Because it's the left side of the head which energizes the right side of the body. The left brain energizes the right side, the right brain energizes the left side. So if any of you had issues with your right side during this week and wondered, gee, why did that happen when the 12th path was on the left side of the tree as I'm looking at it? It's because the 12th is on the right side if you are the tree, and because the left side of the brain energizes that right side. It's also great for purging everything, especially dealing with anger and redeeming negative energy or any energy through healing. So how many of you felt the need to go for some healing work with some holistic practitioner or massage therapist last week? Again, look into your journal and just see that. It also helps you to increase your understanding of your dreams and also dream recall. The 12th path is great for dreams. And it gives you that ability to see through things. We discussed that last week, and that could literally be the ability to see through a wall, or if you're doing healing work, to see into the person's body. But it might also simply be that your third eye is seeing an overlay of physical things. So, for example, you're able to see those very minute muscle twitches and changes and shifts that tell you if a person is telling the truth or lying when you look at their face. It also increases, again, communication with your guides. Your connection to your guides is almost complete on this path. It increases your ability to use your throat center. That's your creative will, folks. And it gives you the ability to release your bonds and go with the flow with a sense of confidence. It allows your higher self to manifest its creativity through your lower personality. Remember that, folks. We really need to remember that, because that's a big part of where we're going next week. Bringing that higher consciousness down to manifest through us in the world as we're moving through the world. And redoing that 12th path is going to help you to do that. Being able to clearly recognize cause and effect by seeing the whole picture. And that, again, remember I said before, it helps us to be able to step forward into our future, because we are, before we even take the action, we're able to imagine, if we take this action, what will be its repercussions. So even before we act, we're already seeing where our next action is going to lead us. This is, folks, what leads to a charmed life. You know, folks, I'm also an astrologer, and for many years I heard astrologers, friends of mine, saying that as long as a person was living their life in the normal way, they could always use astrology to predict. But when somebody really spiritual came into their office, They couldn't predict for that individual because they couldn't predict how that person would respond to the energy. This is the reason why. When you are able to recognize cause and effect, when you're able to see it like a stone tossed, before you ever even let the stone leave your hand, you're already knowing where it's going to go. If you're able to see that cause and effect, you're literally no longer a person who can be predicted for, because you're doing it for yourself. At that point, if you go to a psychic or an astrologer for a reading, they're not predicting for you. You're merely getting confirmation that what you see is also what they see. It gives you the ability to see truth and to understand there are no rights and there are no wrongs. That's a hard one. This is a hard one. But when you join your energy to that of the Great Mother, this being that gave birth to the two universes, gave birth to you in a sense, knew from the time of your very first incarnation where your last incarnation will have led you, and every one of them in between, seeing it all as if it's happening at the same time. And from that exalted point of view, there is no judgment. That Great Mother doesn't judge you. That Great Mother understands that every single thing you've ever done in any of your lifetimes has been a learning experience, has been part of your growth and your understanding and your development and your insight into self. And from the very beginning, no matter what the issues were that you got yourself involved with, that Great Mother knows that eventually you will cross the finish line and be whole and insightful and perfect again in every way. And everything along the way is a learning experience. Wow. From this point of view, no rights and no wrongs. Only truth. That's huge. And most of we humans, most of the time, don't have the opportunity to see life that way. But when every once in a while we can climb into that rarefied atmosphere of the 12th path, this higher aspect of Bina, we get to see that and understand that. And it gives us insight into humanity like nothing else will. Okay, I'm hoping that as I went through all that, I stimulated a few questions. Lisa, are you with me? Who's got a question over in the chat room?
Alrighty, there were 2 questions. One of the gals said you already answered hers. So the second question is, how does the Magician Tarot card relate to the 12th path?
Well, actually, I was pretty much talking about that all through the path. We are magicians, and it's on path 12 that we really, really recognize that. What does the magician do? The magician creates. The magician is that individual who will create something out of nothing. Now, I know you're thinking of stage magicians, misdirection. That's not the magic they're talking about. They're talking here about the magic of pure creation. I hope that answers that question. No misdirection here. The magic of pure creation, which is truly what a magician is supposed to be. Are there any other questions?
There are not.
Wow. Wow. Apparently, Path 12 was one of those super internal time periods that we went on that said, oh, wow, life is just getting better and better and better. I did see one comment on Facebook that I thought was worthy of repeating, and that was what needs to get done, or what this person needed to get done in their life while on Path 12, even the things she didn't want to do, were accomplished without much effort. And I mentioned that when I was reading through the things the 12th path helps us to deal with. I wanted to point that out again, because the 12th path is so internal. We're doing this internal work, and all of a sudden things outside of us just seem to flow. Okay. And I think I saw another comment or question come up as I was talking.
Yes, you did. Okay, the first one. Does astral travel relate to the 12th path?
Astral travel relates to every single path on the tree of life. The bottom of the tree of life, being Malkuth, is the physical plane. That is the only Sephiroth that doesn't involve astral travel. Now, when we were all the way back down on the bottom of the tree, doing path 31 and 30, 30, 32, we were at the very beginnings of learning how to astral travel. And on that level, it was purely, literally the astral body, the energy body, which part of it can actually be seen under a magnifying glass. Kirlian photography can photograph it. It's close to the physical. And that astral body was physically leaving the body. And we got a little higher up on the tree, and we began to recognize that we could become aware in our dreams. We could sometimes take control of our dreams. That was a higher level of astral traveling. And then when we got north, when we got higher up in Kether, we began to realize that the astral traveling that we were doing then was much more subtle, because it was more like our mental body was traveling. We didn't so much feel the energy as much as we felt just this freedom of flow. And then we crossed over the supernals, and we moved over the abyss and into the supernals. And now we're dealing with that supernal triangle. And the astral traveling we're doing on this level is almost working with pure energy. So it's almost as if you're imagining, you're seeing, you're there. You're experiencing for example, in your dreams, the astral traveling on this level is receiving the dream in one split second, and then spending the entire next day remembering it because there was so much in it. That's the kind of astral travel that's happening on this level. It's instantaneous understanding. It's instantaneous travel. It's pure being. It's to think is to be. And I know this is getting a little bit confusing, but I also think at this level, you are understanding me, because a lot of you are having these experiences. It's like, think it, manifest it. Think it, manifest it. Okay? Okay. Another question has popped up.
Yes, we have a couple more. Can you define the Great Mother, as you just mentioned her? Please forgive my ignorance. Of course, I've heard of Earth referred to that way, but are you saying that you refer to God as the Great Mother? What's the history there?
Okay. We're going to have to go. I'm going to direct you also to perhaps doing some studying with going back to reading the very first chapter in the book, because a lot of this gets described there, and also continuing your studies outside of this class in the Kabbalah in a classroom kind of a way. And I do have that 4-lesson class that goes into in a lot of depth. It's an audio class. It's an MP3. It's very, very easy to understand. But let's take it back and take a look at the tree. Okay? Here's our tree of life. And Kether is the Godhead, the source of all that is. Kether is neither male nor female. According to the traditional way that the Kabbalah is taught, the energy gradually forms itself up here above Kether, and the first point of awareness of all of existence, the entire cosmos, is in Kether. And everything else, kind of like the Big Bang Theory, everything else, the entire tree of life, everything in our known universe, our known cosmos, springs from Kether. And it is both male and female. Now, at the moment of the Big Bang is engendered by the force of Chokmah, the father of all. Think of it as a giant explosion of sperm release. Bam. So there's an explosion, and Chokmah shoots forth, and Binah, Great Mother, is formed as Hokmah shoots forth, and that which is left behind settles into Bina. So you see, you get could call Hokmah the father of all, Bina the mother of all, Hokmah the great father, Bina the great mother. These are energies, folks. These aren't people. These are energies. These are cosmic energies with a consciousness so grand and so vast that we can only understand it through metaphor, which is a great deal of what we've been doing here with our pathworking. And Kether is that point from which it all springs. And of course, at this point, you know that all you know of Kether is what you can see from the front half, because the backside of Kether looks into the vast unknown. In the Hindu tradition in the East, they talk about the great Big Bang, the birth of the manifested universe, as being the exhalation of God. And that is involution. And then eventually that breath begins to retire back to itself. And that's the process of involution. But that point between the breaths is the point where the universe is not manifested. Kether is looking back into the great unknown. And again, we can only understand these things through metaphor, because the consciousnesses, these intelligences, are so vast. And Lisa, what's our next question? That was a good
one. Okay. I had a few situations where it seemed like my body was moving at a different speed than reality. Is that astral travel? It was in real time, not dreaming.
I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, because there are several ways that I could address that and that I've experienced. There's the way where my body is actually moving at a normal pace, but internally I feel like I'm flying through things. Okay? That is not so much, that's not astral travel. What that is that your energy is moving and doing things inside of yourself so fast that things that might have, in terms of your understanding and your insight, might have taken a couple of years before, are now getting resolved in minutes. But that's internal to you. And the outer world is still going to be seeing you moving at a perfectly normal rate and don't understand that speed that's going on inside of you as things within you are being resolved. So that's one way you can manifest that speed. However, there is another way. It is quite possible to fold both time and space. It's not just something that you see on the movies or on TV. This is something Kabbalists at a very advanced level have been known to do. And it would be when you're at this point and you're recognizing that time and space simply don't exist, that you fold space. And let me give you an example from my own life. Not that I do this consciously on purpose, but I can recall a time when I needed to be at my mother-in-law's house for a birthday party at 6 o'clock and forgot the time. And she was kind of a Brunhilde of a person. Nobody wanted to cross her. So I really wanted to make sure I was there by 6. But I had a whole bunch of errands that had to be run before I got to her house. And those were errands that probably took about 2.5 to 3 hours. And I had 45 minutes to get to her house. So you see, it wasn't possible. Couldn't be done. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to get there late. And if she gets mad, she gets mad. And she'll just have to, deal with it. So I just went into my own normal, calm, what to me was calm way, and went from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and did those errands and pulled it all together and walked into her door at exactly 6 o'clock. Now, that was not possible to do. Wasn't possible. Couldn't have got my hair done. I mean, the beautician could only move so fast. Couldn't have stopped at the mall to pick up the gift and then had it wrapped. And all these were things I had to do. And I did them in 45 minutes. And they were 2.5 to 3 hours at least. Now, that's what I mean by folding time. That's one example. I've done that many times in my life. And when you are folding time, you don't feel like you're moving faster. But when you look at the clock, it's like you've done so much and 5 minutes has passed. Okay, we all do that upon occasion. The more we work on this path, the more we are going to be able to do that. It's easier, I think, to fold time than space, but because, and the time-space continuum is very close to each other. I don't know when I've been on the road, on road trips, and it took me 2 hours to travel a 6-hour distance, and I didn't break the speed limit. Now, I see that as folding time, but it could have also been folding space. This has not happened to me, but I have a friend who worked at the Monroe Institute, who was driving down the highway to work, and a tree fell immediately in front of her car. And she just put her hands up in front of her face because she knew she was dead. And when she pulled her hands away, she was on the other side of the tree, driving down the highway. Okay? And I know this, I trust this person, this wasn't made up. So what happened there? She folded space right through the tree. So these things are possible. For most of us, they're not under our conscious control. But I've got to tell you, if it's possible once, it's possible again and again. And it is also possible to have it under conscious control. And I do believe that as we all evolve, this journey of the Kabbalah is something we are all on, even though we may not all be doing it in a structured way the way you folks are. I do believe that one day these skills, these abilities, will be mankind's heritage. And are there any other questions, Lise?
There is one more. I recently discovered something called soul journeying. Is that a good idea?
I'm not really familiar with it, so I'm not the person that you really should be asking that question of. But what I would be doing would be asking the guide, instructor, leader, whatever the person calls themselves, or the book that you're reading, I'd be asking exactly what the process is, what is the goal, is there a system? I'd want to know more about it before I did it. If you feel intuitively led to it, then maybe it's a good next step for you. I have heard other students taking this with different instructors, but none of them have really confided or told me what it entailed. You might want to put it on Facebook and see, has anybody done soul journeying? And if you have, what did you think about it? What was your experience? It seems to me that the people that I've heard talk about doing it were doing it with people who are shaman, and that they were taken sometimes in a sweat lodge, which is a shamanic, very, very spiritual shamanic journeying. I've heard other people say that the journeying with the soul is much like shamanic journeying, that they're two different words used to cross, but I'm not sure. I would want to investigate it first. Shamanic journeying is very much like our path working, only it's more like one session at a time. It's more like having a regression, only to get into different parts of yourself that you might want to be working through. And again, exactly how that shamanic journeying happens is going to be totally dependent upon the shaman who's leading you. They're all different. So before you get involved, find out the process. And definitely, if it involves some physical counterpart, like a sweat lodge, find out both how the person is, structuring it, how they're leading it, find out their experience, how they learned how to do it, because some of those things can actually be physically dangerous if the person who's doing them hasn't been really trained well. So I guess what I'm saying is, do your research, and then if it still appeals, enjoy it and grow from it. Another good question. Thank you. And I think that may be all of our questions.
That was the end of them.
Okay. So let's take a look at where we're at right now. Because on Sunday, we swapped out, go back up and look at exactly where we are, so you can read with me. We had been wearing bright yellow, we went to pale yellow. We had an agate under our pillow on path 12, we went to chalcedony or topaz. And we had the magician under our pillow when we went to the fool. And we're using our oil. Most of us are still using lavender, but we're using our oil with the path. And we started our journey in Hokmah. And Hokmah is so, so far from the physical that many of you this week feel already, it's only been a couple of days since Sunday, but many of you feel already like your feet are barely on the ground. This is not a real earthy path by any means. We started in Hokmah, floating way, 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 way in that rarefied atmosphere. We traveled the 11th path and ended up in Kether. You'll see here in the diagram, we got the book of knowledge, okay? We got our word, our power word, tremendous energetic information on this path, explosive energy. And let's see what path 11 is supposed to help you work with in your life. Most of you should have found this energizing, especially around the crown and the head. We're going to talk more about this when we come back next week, but myself, oh boy, have I been having crown center, major crown center things going on, and it's definitely this path. It's almost like I can barely comb my hair, so I've been wearing my hat a lot to keep it under control, but it's really a delightful feeling because I don't know how you folks feel about it, but I actually enjoy being in that altered state that happens when the crown center is wide open. Learning the feeling of emptiness and stillness. How many of you have just sat, felt nothing, thought nothing, just enjoy the stillness within? Let go of everything external to self. Then in pure existence, a vessel waiting to be filled. How many of you since Sunday have had that feeling? How many of you have found the yearning to create that space in your life where you could experience that? Being able to recognize symbols, especially of infinity, that are active in your life. All kinds of symbols active in your life. I love synchronicity. I was on a call with a book study group I belong to, and in the book there were infinity signs between every 2 or 3 paragraphs. I just love synchronicity. Being able to recognize symbols, especially of infinity. Here it was in the book, every other paragraph, active in your life. And I just realized that now. That's exciting. Being able to join earth and spirit within yourself. That means staying grounded, keeping your feet on the ground, but keeping that part of you in the world of spirit at the same time. Being able to do both and be comfortable with it. Relaxation, calmness, peacefulness, and astral projection. So again, we get astral projection, but this time it is way, 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 way beyond the physical plane. Astral projection here is the astral projection that takes you out among the stars, that takes you to the energy of pure existence, that takes you to the feeling where your atomic structure is blended to the atomic structure of everything else in the known universe. It gives you a sense of invincibility, the ability to be unaffected by that which is external to you. No matter what's going on around you, not affected by it. Taking with you a feeling of womb-like protection. Finding the ultimate seed of creation within yourself. What is that ultimate seed of creation? What is it deep within yourself that you yearn to create? We're all creators. What is your ultimate seed? Recognizing that you're just as responsible for your inner creations as for your outer creations. Boy, oh boy, be careful of what you think is getting more important all the time. Coming to an understanding that your very breath is life, and releasing all blocks to your energy flow. Gaining insight into that which is unmanifest. That is one of my favorite parts of this path. We can't see it, but we can intuit it, we can feel it. We can almost reach out and touch it, not quite. Nurturing a need to be of service to all. Understanding that you can best be of service by letting the creative force work through you, unhindered by your personality. Unhindered by your personality. I used to think that was kind of like my higher consciousness moving through life and wearing my personality like a new suit of clothes. Just a little bit of a funny concept there for you to think about. Increasing your sexuality and your sensuality. The 12th path is downright orgasmic. It increases your ability to merge with another human being, to feel them, where they are, what they're doing within you. It gives you the ability to feel the rhythm of the universe itself, to feel its pulse, and to feel a part of it all. And when you're feeling the pulse of the universe and you're a part of everything else, you can sense that there's a natural order. And if you can adjust your timing to that natural order instead of fighting it, everything in your life begins to flow. I like this, explosive stillness. That really defines the 11th path beautifully. It gives you the ability to expand your own energy outwards, as well as your consciousness. This is creating a sense of resonance in a way that can affect other people. And it gives you the ability to comprehend elements of creativity. Elements of creativity. Not just yours, but those in other people as well. Understanding the interaction of good and evil, and that there is a necessary balance. Increasing perceptual sensitivity. This means the sensitivity of all of your senses. It releases the Kundalini energy, raising your vibration, and gives you a recognition that you're part of something infinitely greater than your ability to comprehend. You're a part of it. You're an intrinsic and valuable and irreplaceable part of it. And yet it is so great, you cannot comprehend it. A metaphor here is to imagine an ant walking along the sidewalk, and you're walking by over it. Does that ant even know that you exist? If it could comprehend you, it probably would be living in fear, because you're so vast. It's that kind of a concept. A feeling of knowledge within yourself, without knowing consciously what you know. That I know what I know kind of a feeling. You're understanding that wisdom comes from the heart and knowledge is from the head. And in the 11th path, it's all about wisdom. All about wisdom. From the heart. To know something, you must recognize that it's a part of yourself. That's worth contemplating, worth thinking about. Activation of the top 4 chakras, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. That entire top of your body is energized by the 11th path. Lots and lots of stuff happening there. And now is a good time to open up to questions. I saw a couple of people posting questions in the chat room. Lisa, what are they asking?
Okay, the first one says, biochar NG for crystals or pineal gland?
Okay, I got the biochar crystals, but I'm not understanding those last words.
It says biochar and then big NG for crystals or pineal gland. Unless the computer skipped and it's supposed to say biocharging for crystals or pineal gland.
Yeah, I'm afraid that they're going to, whoever wrote that question is either going to have to connect with me on Facebook or put it into words that I can understand. I'm afraid I'm not getting it. She might be asking, or he might be asking, about how to charge crystals so that they could affect your pineal, or what crystals affect your pineal. But I'm not understanding the specifics of the question. I might have it all wrong, so I'd rather she rephrased it. That way I can ask, and then I know I'm answering the right question. Okay, well, are there any other questions in there?
There are.
Okay.
All right. If we were to do the paths again, but did them, say, at a Jewish synagogue, even though the meditations and mandalas would be different, would the results be any different? Or is the path simply the path no matter how, when, or where it's done or translated? Not saying I want to, just curious if it's succinct in and of itself, and doing it through a different format would make no difference.
It's not the path that is different, my friend. It's you. You are constantly changing, and you are constantly evolving. You're not the same individual now as you were at the beginning of this program that we're in this evening. So whether you took Path 11 with a rabbi at a synagogue describing it, or whether you take the Path 11 here with me this evening, or on your own at home 6 months from now, you are always going to have a different response because you are different. If you choose to take that path, and I don't know anyone else right now who's doing the path working, but I'm sure there's someone out there. If you find that other person and you take the path working with them, the difference in how you experience the path isn't going to be them, or that they're using a different system to teach it, or that maybe they're teaching it intellectually as opposed to through a guided visualization as we are here. The difference isn't the methodology. The difference isn't the fact that you have a different place or a different person that you're studying with. The difference is you. And the fact that you are different is what will have brought you to that person, to that place, at that time, to experience exactly what you need in order to have the result that you are requiring in your development at that time. Okay? I hope that made sense to you. You're evolving, and the path working is about you. Next question, Lisa.
Okay, well, we actually just have a last comment. I, by chance, discovered this very beautiful movie last night called Golden Kingdom. It was about the journey of young Buddhist monks in rural China. This movie beautifully translated feelings of stillness and pure existence. Oh, and we had one more just pop in while I was reading that. Okay, you mentioned
a lovely comment. Thank you. That was a good comment.
You mentioned changing holding the tarot and stone from the right to the left hand for further path working. Why?
Once again, your right hand is the sending hand. The right side of your body is generative. It's a sending, generative part of you. the left hand and the left part of your body is receptive. Okay? So when you're doing the path working and your mind and your eyes are seeing and experiencing and your emotions are responding, when you're doing that path working for the first time and you want to charge the stone, you want to hold the stone in your right hand because you want to project all those responses onto that stone because that's your path. That's how you charge the stone in your right hand. Now in the future, when you are moving through life and you want to recall that energy, you hold the stone in your left hand because you're going to want to reabsorb that energy. Now, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're saying, well, what if I do the same path again in the future? Maybe I do path 11 again. I've already got a charged chrysolith. Do I put it in my right hand or my left hand? Well, if I'm redoing the path, it could be either hand is the answer here. If I'm redoing the path and I put it in my right hand, I'm going to add to it the whole cornucopia of new responses that I'm presently experiencing as I redo the path a second time. But if I put that stone in my left hand, I'm going to be absorbing my experiences from the first time I did the path, which will affect how I experience the path the second time. So it could be done either way, but the results would be a little bit different. And again, that would be your choice how you did that. Okay? Again, a great question. Thank you. Any other questions there, Lisa?
That was the last one.
Cool. Now, there's something that somebody wrote on Facebook that I would like to read out to you because I thought it was really appropriate. One of the questions I often get when we do this path is, Sandy, why, here's the 11th path we're looking at, why, as we go through this path, is one of the symbols the swastika? Because there's so much negative association with the swastika. There are so many symbols on the tree of life that are universal symbols, folks. The 6-pointed star, the 5-pointed star, the cross, the swastika. And some people have resistance or objections to one because of their associations. But these symbols all go back, they predate most active religions. And this is something someone wrote that I want to read to you because it really gives a good explanation of that swastika. And of course, she pulled this off of the web. She said, one of my questions was going to be why the swastika for Kether. We see it in all the paths that lead into Kether. It is the oldest known symbol. The swastika is an ancient symbol that's been used for over 3,000 years. That even predates the ancient Egyptian symbol of the Ankh. Artifacts like pottery and coins from the ancient Troy show that the swastika was a commonly used symbol as far back as 1000 BC. During the following 1,000 years, the image of the swastika was used by many cultures around the world, including China, Japan, India, and many in southern Europe. By the Middle Ages, the swastika was a well-known symbol, if not commonly used, and it was called by many different names. In China, it was the Wan, England, the Pfeilfort, Germany, Hakenkreuz, or Kreuz, Greece, Tetraskelion, and Gamalion, India, the swastika. Though it is not known for exactly how long, even Native Americans have used the symbol of the swastika. So, what does the swastika mean now? There's a great debate as to what the swastika means at this point. For 3,000 years, it meant life and good luck. But because of the Nazis in Germany, it has also taken on a meaning of death and hate. These conflicting meanings are causing problems in today's society. For Buddhists and Hindus, the swastika is a very religious symbol that's commonly used. Chirag Badlani shares a story about one time when he went to make some photocopies of some Hindu gods for his temple. While standing in line to pay for the photocopies, some people behind him in the line noticed that one of the pictures had a swastika, and so they called him a Nazi. Unfortunately, the Nazis were so effective at their use of the swastika emblem that many do not even know any other meanings today for the swastika. So can there be two completely opposite meanings for one symbol? And I just want to say that, remember, the swastika was selected by the leaders in Germany because of all those great and wonderful meanings, energy and life and unity. It was the Republic itself that misused it and caused so much harm. So the negative association is still not with the symbol, it's with the people who use the symbol. So I don't think there are a negative and a positive meaning. I think any symbol, this is worth noting in our own minds, any symbol can be taken and used in a negative way. Look, for example, at the five-pointed star. The five-pointed star is found on the tree of life with the point up in some areas. It's found on the tree of life with the point down in some areas. When the point is down, it talks about involution of energy coming into matter and creating us. When the point is up, it talks about evolution of energy and a heightening of consciousness. And yet Satanists in our society today have decided that the star pointed down means the devil. Kabbalists don't even believe in the devil, my friends. So any symbol, even a cross, which initially, again, we can find the cross on the Kabbalah, and the cross was initially used to say the vertical arm of spirit crosses the physical arm of the physical plane, that's the sideways, the horizontal line, and that is the point at which the soul originates. That point would be a vertical line, and horizontal line of the center of the tree would be that point just above deep breath, where the higher self comes into life. And yet, many cultures have used the cross itself as something negative. So it's really a matter of how is that symbol being used, and don't assume that a symbol is negative or has a bad meaning because the people using it are bad. Remember, its meaning can't be changed. The people can be misusing or abusing or just using a symbol that they don't understand the meaning of to begin with. So I hope that answered that question. I want to thank you for putting that rendition of what the swastika is all about and bringing that up, because I certainly know that's been a disturbance over the years to many people who have studied the Kabbalah. Okay, once again, are there any other questions?
Nope, that's all of them.
Okay. In which case, I'm going to just let you take a quick look at next week's mandala. We're going to keep the Fool under the pillow and your jacinth or light blue stone under the pillow through Sunday. On Sunday, you're going to switch out the light blue stone either for no stone or put your whole bag of stones under there, which is what I will be doing, or on the night table next to you. You're going to switch out the Fool card for the entire 22 cards of the major arcana. Again, you can put them under your pillow or on the night table next to you. You're going to be wearing all the colors of the rainbow or white, because next week we're going to begin, the path you do on Sunday is going to begin your journey in Kether, and it's going to take you, it's going to take you all the way down the tree in this zigzag fashion, as you see here, all the way down the tree. Easier to see it here because the tree of life, I love this picture because that tree of life shows exactly the physical body on it. And we're going to collect all of the energy. We're going to collect everything that we need from our journey up the tree. And we're going to bring it back to utilize it in our lives. And I can't wait.